Having looked at position in relation to the one-umpire system, we need to remember that the two-umpire system is being utilised more and more in junior football today. In some competitions, it's possible that the first year or level 1 umpire will be required to officiate in a match using the two-umpire system. This segment is to be completed by those umpires who will find themselves in a two-umpire match in their first year. In a set play where the kick will be directed towards number 2, the umpire takes up a position about 15 metres inside the player on the mark, where he can observe and control both the kicker and the player on the mark. Number 2 initially takes up a position just short of the anticipated destination of the kick and inside the players waiting for the ball. The umpire supervises the mark and retains control, that is, remains the umpire, until the ball is kicked. Number 2 supervises the players at the receiving end and becomes the umpire when the action commences. The change of control occurs after the kick has been taken. Number 2 has had nothing to do with supervising the mark in this situation. In a set play where the ball will be kicked away from number 2, the umpire supervises play immediately after awarding the mark or free kick by putting the player on the mark. He retains verbal control while backing away in the expected direction of the kick. Meanwhile, number 2 moves quickly towards the mark. When he is between 15 and 20 metres from the mark and in a position to assume verbal control, the umpire relinquishes control. Number 2 becomes the umpire, takes control of the mark, and moves to a position along the line of the mark about 15 metres inside the play. While this is happening, the new number 2 quickly takes up position just short of the expected destination of the kick and about 20 to 25 metres inside the players waiting for the ball. Two-umpire control applies in a set play where a kick at goal is unlikely to score. After awarding the set play in this situation, the umpire takes up a position similar to that for a kick away from number 2. That is, he puts the player on the mark and backs away in the direction of the kick until number 2 has moved in to take verbal control. In this case, however, the umpire does not move to the goal line, but stands shorter and wider so that he doesn't get caught up in the ensuing play. Number 2 moves in to supervise the mark and becomes the umpire. He must assume verbal control as soon as possible and move to a position about 15 metres along and inside the line of the mark. As soon as the ball is kicked, he relinquishes control and becomes number 2, taking up his position within the tram lines. The umpire then controls the play which follows from the kick.
Where the umpire awards a set play and the kick is not likely to score, and the umpire is required to show a presence on the spot, he will indicate to the number 2 that he'll be staying at the set play by tapping his buttock. Number 2 will run into the 50-metre area and take up a position appropriate to where he expects the kick to land.
The umpire will take his position where he can control the mark, becoming number 2 as soon as the player disposes of the ball. Alternatively, the umpire may award a set play and then run forward to a position at the expected destination of the kick, so as to keep players forward of the play under observation. In this case, number 2 will run in and position himself to take control of the mark, thus becoming the umpire. When the ball has been kicked, he will adjust his position according to the subsequent play, again becoming number 2. As previously explained, with a few exceptions, one umpire control generally applies within the area bounded by the 50-metre lines. 3 types of set play within the one umpire area are a set play out of defence, a kick at goal likely to score, and a kick in from a behind. Correct positioning is important in each of these set plays. In a set play out of defence, the usual one umpire positioning applies. The umpire will position himself between kicker and catcher at about 45 degrees to the line of the kick. From here, the umpire can observe and have verbal control of the player on the mark, the player with the ball, and the players at the expected destination of the kick. As the ball is kicked, he should run to a position about 20 to 25 metres inside the contesting group and adjacent to it. Number 2 is positioned within the tram lines or just outside, depending on the play, and approximately a kick away on the same side of the major axis as the umpire. If the ball is unlikely to cross the end of square line or its extension to the boundary on each side of the ground, the umpire retains control. This gives number 2 the opportunity to make good position if the ball continues quickly down the ground. If, from a kick out of defence, the ball will cross the end of square line or its extension, the umpire will relinquish control to number 2 immediately after the kick. One umpire control also applies when the player on the mark is required to take up his position less than 40 to 45 metres from the goal and the kick at goal seems likely to score. After lining the player up, the umpire should position himself close enough to have verbal control of both the player on the mark and the player taking the kick. He should stand at least 45 degrees from the anticipated line of the kick. The shorter the kick, the wider this angle should be. Number 2 stands within the tram lines, ready for any rebound. Where the mark of the set play is wide on the ground, near the boundary line for instance, and the umpire has to run out to line up the kick at goal, he must take into account the possibility that the player with the ball may kick or play on quickly. He should ensure that he is not caught out of position by being too close to the mark or under the flight of the ball. The important thing in this situation is that the umpire must be alert and anticipate the next act of play. If it looks like the player will kick quickly or play on, the umpire should not run into the mark, but make position based on the anticipated next act of play. If it is obvious that the player will kick at goal, the umpire should run in quickly and line up the kick, then quickly move back to the correct position.